And welcome to the Expo Show. I'm your host, Gregory Meriweather. Today we're going to be talking about the juvenile system, and I'm sitting here with one of my guests, and that's Judge Geoffrey Gaither. How are you doing today, sir?
Man, I'm doing well. How about you?
Man, I'm great, man. It's good to have you on. This brother is busy. He's always doing some work. One thing I must say about Judge Gaither is I know he has a heart for the youth.
Yes.
He has been a man who not only shows up, he shows up, he brings information, but an advocate. Mm-hmm. You know, there's not a lot of times where you see someone on both sides that says, you know what, listen, let me help you not be in front of me.
That's the goal.
And I love that about you, sir. So, man, tell me what's been going on, Judge. I know you were, you said you just got back.
Yes. Yeah, well, let me see. Let's back up just a little bit. Yeah. We had our male mentoring conference that was on October 14th. Mm-hmm. That was just that ended with fantastic results. We had about 350 fellows to come out. This is young men between basically 5th grade to 18. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we had our mentoring conference with all the, not all, but I tried to get as many mentors as I could who were here in the city providing mentoring services. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful piece about that is that has really gone organic, which is really what I wanted, because now they have created their own movement amongst themselves. They agreed to meet further. Kareem Hines, who is in charge of a New Boy, is really taking this thing and running with it. So the mentors are meeting and talking about issues amongst themselves without even involving myself in the court, so they can learn how to be better mentors and sharing, providing information so they don't have to reinvent the wheel, how best to serve the youth of the community. And that was one of the biggest takeaways, at least from the male mentoring conference.
You were with Robert Jackson?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, my buddy, my friend brother Robert Jackson was the guest speaker, and he brought a powerful message. You know what? One of the most powerful things about the conference was seeing young black males really open up and express what was deep inside, and some of them were in tears about the pain that they're suffering. And you know, that is really kind of the problem about the youth in our community, is the trauma and the secondary trauma and the pain that they're suffering, and there's no real outlet for that. And that's the dirty shame amongst all juvenile jurisdictions. As a matter of fact, you mentioned, I just got back in town. I was in Virginia for a symposium on transformational change for juvenile justice. For a conference there, I was on a guest panelist, and then I spent the last 3 days in Denver with the RFK Foundation. We're talking about dual status youth, and dual status is a court that I run here in Indianapolis. Okay. Dual status is the term that describes youth that are duly involved in our two systems. The juvenile justice system has the delinquency aspect, or public safety. These are kids who commit delinquent offenses. Okay. And then the other system is child welfare. This is the Department of Children's Services. Okay. But there's some youth and families that find themselves on probation, and their families are involved in the child welfare system. We call those dual status, dual use. So what we have aimed to do is to put those children and families into one court. Okay. So we don't play yo-yo. You go here for this judge, you go here for this court. No, the best practice is one judge, one family, one voice, one time. So I run that court here in Indianapolis. And so we spent 3 days talking about dual status youth all over the country, and trying to really improve juvenile justice and the delivery of services, and trying to find new ways to solve old problems.
Gotcha. So here in Indianapolis, we're looking and we see crime increasing rapidly. We see a lot of nonviolent crime, and then we're seeing murder rates.
Let me stop you.
Go ahead.
Because that's not really accurate.
Okay.
That's not really. What you see is an increase in the hype.
Okay.
But criminal statistics, if you look over a 10-year period, we're almost at all-time low.
Okay.
But what we have is an increase in the 24-hour news cycle. Okay. So it seems like you get the impression of, the appearance of, oh man, it's out of control. No, it's not. Okay. Our statistics in terms of children who enter into the system is a downwardly trending curve. Okay. If you look at the federal statistics nationwide, crime is on the way down. Now, the murder, for some reason, is spiking upward. So that part is accurate. But overall crime, it's almost never been lower. Oh yeah. Right. As a matter of fact, this is 2017. We have reduced the number of kids that enter into the system by more than half.
Okay.
I mean, we were really humping a few years ago. Not so much now. Not so much. But what has happened is there's been an increase in the complexity of the cases.
Okay.
And so the individual case has so many different factors that it really is a difficult matter.
Mm-hmm. So when we think about that, and you say crime, you say crime is going down, murder is going up.
Yes.
What do you think are the reasons for that?
The same reasons that existed when that first historical crime was recorded, when Cain slew Abel.
Okay.
There hasn't been much change for that.
Okay.
Greed, envy, love of money, love of man, love of woman, those same human characteristics that existed in the book of Genesis continue to exist now.
Yeah.
And it's no different.
So when you think about that,
yes,
and we put together conferences, we put together groups, we put together, organizations.
Yes, efforts.
When we know those things are factors, how effective do you believe those things are when we put those together?
Well, my personal belief is that programs don't really work. What really works is the relationship between human beings. I continue to see, now I've been on the bench since 1995, 22 years, I'm going on my 23rd.
Okay.
I continue to see kids who were in front of me years ago that are now adults. And invariably, they will always ask me about a case manager. They'll ask me about a probation officer, some individual who was instrumental in their lives as a juvenile. They don't ask me about a program. They ask me about a person. And invariably, it was a person that provided some kind of nurturing love or guidance right at the right time. And so, the problem with programs always call for a check writer. And as long as the check writer is in your corner, then it's going to go well.
Right.
But as soon as you get south with the check writer, the program goes away.
Right.
And I can think of a number of programs over the years where it seemed to be going great, but the political will change. And so, the strength of the program is always subject to the political will of whoever is writing the check to keep it going.
Yes.
That's not an effective program. That's not an effective approach. And so, and I create the example using the male mentoring conference that we had on October 14th in Warren. And I talked about how the mentors getting together and organically creating their own effort. That kind of thing works because this is like peer mentoring, peer mentorship. Nothing can really replace the absence of father, the absence of daddy.
Right.
And that's really what the mentoring effort is about, trying to create the most family-like situation for this young man. So the mentors really become kind of substitute daddy to guide this young man on the path toward life, such as daddy would. That's an effort that works. It doesn't. I mean, it's not new. It's not rocket science. It's not some fancy 6-syllable word that's compliant to that. It's just a young man being led by another man, teaching a young man how to be a man.
Excellent points. You're watching the Expo Show. We're sitting here with Judge Geoffrey Gaither. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Robert Mathis. I spent 14 years playing for your Indianapolis Colts. During that time, I noticed a lot of violence in what has become my city as well. Our most precious resource is being lost at a rapid rate. That resource is our future, better known as our children. I'm here to tell you that I love you. I love the city. I'm Indy, Indy is me. Please, please stop the violence. I'm Robert Mathis, and I am your brother.
And welcome back to the Expo Show. I'm your host, Gregory Meriweather. We're sitting here with Judge Geoffrey Gaither. And man, I'm having a good time with Judge, man. He's got me cracking up already.
They need to film the in-between.
They need to get that, man. You just had me going. So, man, I want to talk about this, Judge.
Yes.
Just something I was reading. It says, about 6% of working age, 18 to 64 years old black men are currently in state or federal prison or in a municipal jail, when you hear those numbers, I mean, what goes through your mind? Because it's like, man, I mean, mass incarceration is real.
It's real, yeah.
How do we combat it?
You know, just this morning, I was out at Child Advocates because we partner with Child Advocates to host a series called Undoing Racism.
Yes.
And we do this about every 3 months. So today and tomorrow is the workshop we're having, and the next one is coming up actually November 30th to December 1st. We've been doing this since 2010 to address the issue of disproportionality in the child welfare system as well as the juvenile justice system. And one of the things we've discovered, which is not really an aha moment, was the overrepresentation of people of color in all institutions, not criminal justice system, but in labor and education and housing and just everything is pervasive. But to ask me the question, you know, sometimes I get a little overwhelmed at the enormity of the problem.
Yeah.
And now some would say the institutions are working the way they were designed to work. I mean, because if you look at the Constitution of the United States of America, Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 3, that talks about 3/5 of all other persons.
Right.
And the compromise that were made with human beings between the northern states and the southern states and the language that was created. We've been suffering before then. That was just documentation of our suffering.
Right.
And we've been suffering since then, since that great executive order that we call the Emancipation Proclamation, which was an executive order.
Right.
You know, there's been a lot of talk about that.
That's real.
But that's executive order we like. We like that one, not so much lately. But so the emancipation, which really put into motion the freeing of the slaves, whatever that means, because I guarantee you and I assure you that these black men and these young black men that are still suffering of the chains feel the same thing. And many will argue that slavery still exists.
Yes.
When you talk about the incarceration and then the impact upon even upon release.
Right.
When I was in Virginia, the governor spoke, Governor McAuliffe, and he was taking fire because he issued orders with the restoration of rights immediately upon being released from incarceration, and took heat from at least the Republicans there because they were, I mean, in general, were about voter suppression.
Right.
And McAuliffe was about voter restoration.
Right.
And that's kind of a problem nationwide about how voting rights are restored to individuals who were under incarceration. So you asked me what I think about. I just think about the enormity of the problem, how complex it is, and why we people of color, specifically black men, continue to suffer. I mean, we continue to be caught up in the system. We can't seem to escape. And young men that come in front of me every day, I say, wow, the system was designed to trap you. Why do you continue to present yourself? You know, my granddad used to say, if you don't want to get hit by a car, stay out of traffic. I mean,
simple.
I mean, it really is kind of
really
basic, you know.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow. I mean, why life doesn't have to be this way.
Right.
I mean, you know the difference between right and wrong. I mean, life is so difficult as it is. Why must you choose wrong? I mean, why must you continue to put yourself in a position where I get to control your life? You know, all these, you know, and all these things that life has to offer. Why are you here?
Right.
You know, life is all of this. Why can't you? Why are you here? You know, why are you going into cars in the middle of the night, stealing chains and things like that? Now, I am not naive. Okay?
Right.
I understand about the family dynamics. I understand about the legacy that exists in some families. I understand how single-parent homes are just trying to get by, and some people will do anything to get by. And anything is a capital A anything.
Right.
I get that, you know, and I get families who've been in front of me for the second generation. I had I had a mama recently, and I remember her.
Wow.
When she was 16 and younger, all she did was run away. She just run away. And now she's in court with her daughter. And guess what? Her daughter's running away. And I'm like, Mama, what you want me to do?
Right.
Obviously, I failed with you. Well, I mean, you tell me. You are the expert in running away.
Wow.
What works?
Yes.
And she said, Judge Gaither, nothing works.
Wow.
Okay, so I guess we're going to talk about the coach now.
Right.
We don't have resources for intentional behavior. I mean, if you know what's right and you know what's wrong, but you continue to do wrong, either you don't care about the consequences, or the consequences don't faze you.
Yeah. So when you hear like this, it says approximately 34% of all working age black men who are not incarcerated are ex-offenders.
Yeah. It's mind-blowing.
I mean, it's a mind-blowing statistic, because it's like, so 34% of all working age black men who are not incarcerated are ex-offenders. Man, that's a broken system, Judge.
Is it?
Well, no, it's not. You're absolutely right.
It's
working.
It's working.
You're right.
It's supposed to work.
Absolutely.
And
it's disheartening, but you're absolutely right.
It's okay. Let's say you graduate from high school, or maybe you didn't graduate from high school, but you're working now.
Right.
And on the way to work, you get a speeding ticket. Okay. You're making minimum wage. You got 4 kids to feed. All right. You don't pay the ticket. Then you get a fine.
Right.
Okay. Then you don't go to court. Then they issue a warrant. Then you go to court. Then you lose your job. Okay. Now you can't get a job because you lost your job. Now you find another job, but you don't pay your ticket because you can't pay it.
Right.
Next thing you know, your license gets suspended.
Right.
You get stopped again. Oh, you drive without a license.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're in the system. And you can't get out. And so if you notice, the general legislature of all these states, all they do is pass laws.
Right.
And so there are more ways to ensnare you into the system. How about the law where, if you don't pay your child support, then they
take your license.
Can take your license. Well,
I can't go to work.
If I can't go to work, I can't pay my support. I mean, if I can't pay my support, then the next generation suffers. And so you see the system begins to feed upon itself and create more people for the system to feed upon itself. So, what really is the problem? And so, here's another example. Let's say your car breaks down and you want to put it in the shop. So you still need transportation. So you go to a rental car agency to rent a car, but no, you can't do that because most people only have debit cards,
right?
And they won't accept debit cards. But if they do accept one, then they assess like a $200 fine on it,
right?
And so, wow, like if the people who least can afford to do these things always pay the most.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. You're watching the Expo Show.
When I think about my son, I think about his big heart, how kind he was, just being there for everybody. Look, I am your brother. We need to stop the conflict with all this violence. Let's come together as a people. If you know something, just tell somebody. Our lives do matter.
And welcome back to the Expo Show. I'm your host, Greg Meriweather. We're sitting here with Judge Geoffrey Gaither, and we are talking about the juvenile court system.
Yes.
And not only that, man, we just have touched on so much stuff.
Yes.
But I'm loving what we're touching on. I was looking at this stat, Judge, and it shows how 745,000 black males incarcerated in the United States, and then it shows incarceration in other places. India, 385,000. Argentina, 60,000. Lebanon, 5,000. Canada, 39,000. Japan, 7.4 thousand. Germany, K. I'm saying K. So when I look at these numbers, our prison, just the blacks in prison, supersede countries.
Yeah.
As far as incarceration.
Yeah. I mean, we incarcerate more people in this country. I think we have like 25% of the world's population that's incarcerated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's shameful when you think about it. And that is the culture that has existed. You know, let me just bring it home for a moment. The detention center here in Indianapolis was designed to hold 144 kids.
Right.
When I first got there, it was not unusual to have more than 200 kids held in the detention center. But worse, and I'm almost ashamed of that, is I never gave that much of a thought because that was the culture that existed.
Sure.
And when I first got on the bench, you know, I didn't immediately say that's wrong, because I was new into the culture that existed in the juvenile justice system. And it wasn't until much later that when we began to look at what other jurisdictions are doing, and we came across there's a foundation called the Annie E. Casey Foundation. They introduced a concept called JDAI, which is Juvenile Detention for Alternatives Initiative. And many other jurisdictions as well have adopted JDAI principles. And so we've been able to reduce the total population. Now we have a hard cap of 96. And so to go from excess to 200 to a hard cap of 96, and generally we have maybe like 70 kids in the system. Okay. And I mean, you know, and I say I am ashamed of that, to think that, because I'm not the only hearing officer there. I certainly share a responsibility of locking kids up. I ran into a guy at Nordstrom Rack once during Christmas, and he was so excited to see me. And he was jumping up and down. He called his grandmother on the phone. He said, "Grandma, I'm here with Judge Gaither." And he handed me the phone, and "Hey, Judge Gaither," you know, and so now I went back to the court and I looked the brother up.
Right.
Because I did not remember him, but clearly, well, what he said was that I had sent him to Department of Corrections. I sent him to boys' school.
Sure.
And he said, had I not sent him to Department of Corrections, he either would have been dead or he would have killed somebody, because he was on that path, you know. And he said going to Department of Corrections gave him time to think about his life and where he was going and what his life's options were at that time. And I looked him up and I saw and what his delinquency history was, and I said, wow, if that kid had been in front of me today, I would not have sent him to the Department of Corrections. Wow. We'd have done many other things. And so then I have to ask myself, would his outcome have been different? Would it have been improved? Would it have been better? Because he said sitting at the Department of Corrections in his cell for, I don't know, I think 6 or 7 months was a game changer for him. Now we don't commit the kids the way we used to. We don't lock kids up the way we used to, because the best practice says that the number of that we should reduce the number of contacts with a child with the juvenile justice system. Yeah. And that we don't improve or increase outcomes by locking kids up.
That's true.
And but this kid said locking up was the best thing that ever happened. Now, I mean,
well, I can see that. Now, you know, I was just reading. I always play with numbers.
Sure.
I put out some statistics some months ago that talked about the poverty of Indiana, and it was staggering. It's just wild that our leadership has not truly been talking about it. The Indiana Business Journal just put out on the front page that Indiana has a poverty problem.
Oh yeah.
Now, from 2000 to, I want to say it was like 2011, you went from 11%. To 21.3%.
Wow.
Now, in our community, in the Black or African American community, it's almost at 30%.
Yeah, we're gonna,
And so, why do you think this hasn't been discussed? When I looked at, when it showed Gary, 38%. When it showed Hammond, another 30%.
Yeah.
So the northern border really suffers.
Oh, they're struggling bad.
Yeah.
I mean, ever since the steel mills closed and northern industry moved in, yeah, they're struggling bad.
So even with this article, it gives this notion 21%. It doesn't really address us.
No.
Why? Why not? Because I'm like, that's just, to me, that's total deception at that point.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, listen, you know, if you're showing 21, then you know it's astronomical.
It's more than that, way more. It's going to be double at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so when I see that, and I'm thinking about, you know, okay, there's a push for the new jail.
Yeah.
all these things are transpiring and going on behind the scenes, but we're not really getting a chance to really see it.
No, we're not addressing the problem, we're addressing the symptoms.
Yes.
Well, I mean, poverty doesn't vote.
Yeah.
You know, who speaks for them that have no voice? You know, who is their constituency? You know, we have a movement to bring the Super Bowl here. We have a movement to create venues and entertainment experiences and full life for those that can afford. But what for those, what, as they call the least of us?
Yes.
Who speaks for them? Nobody.
Nobody.
And those that do find their voices to be drowned out.
Absolutely.
You know, even within the juvenile justice system, youth with mental health issues.
Oh man.
Where do you go?
Where do you go?
You know, years ago, when Judge Payne was the presiding judge, he threatened to empty out the detention center and march all the kids down to the governor's office and lock them up on the fences.
Oh, wow.
You know, and yeah, I had that look too because I wasn't sure whether he was playing or serious because
Right.
you know, Judge Payne was a complicated man, and
Yeah.
you know he. Well, I didn't know it was going to be. You know, I don't know how that, but that's how strongly he felt about that, and the lack of resources that we have, because today's youth with mental health issues becomes tomorrow's adult with mental health issues.
Yes.
And if you don't address it on the front end, it's going to cost you on the back end.
Yes.
And most of those kids, and certainly many of those kids right now that are currently in the detention center right now, many of them have some kind of low grade or something even higher mental health issue that prevents them from functioning in a positive way in our society.
Right.
And so that is nothing short of a shame.
Right.
That we are unable to treat the mental health that our youth that we have in our community. That those resources, they just don't exist.
Yeah.
And then if you couple that with the heroin epidemic, if you couple that with the opioid epidemic, we're drinking from the fire hoses at juvenile court.
Man.
And so and our problem today becomes your problem tomorrow. Those statistics that you read, yeah, I can believe that because we're having that problem right now.
So Judge, we got about a minute now. I'm just going to ask you this. Give me a couple of things really quickly that you plan on doing to continue to help build the African American community.
Well, I have self-appointed myself as the outreach director for juvenile court.
Okay.
I go anywhere, I go everywhere. In fact, I'm off today, but I went to a function early today. I've decided that I'm going to do everything I can to prevent children from coming in front of me. So I uplift programs. Anytime I hear about a program, I go, I support. Anybody asks me to do something, I say yes. I don't say no to anything. And so so many people are getting such a kick out of saying, hey, there's a real judge here. Well, you know, I mean, because the kids that I see, I was one of those kids once. Mm-hmm. And so I know that I have some friends myself that benefited from the presence of somebody who cared. Mm-hmm. And so I care. And so I go everywhere I can.
I love it. Well, Judge, I thank you for coming today. You've got a friend right here in Judge Geoffrey Gaither. Make sure you keep tuning in, and we'll see you next week. This is the Expo Show.